I didn't plan to fall for someone at an airport. I didn't plan to start over like this. I didn't plan for any of it. I'm 27. I'm a single mom. I have 2-year-old identical twin girls, Lily and Rose. Their dad, let's call him Mark, is my ex, and we've been split up for a little over a year now. We didn't break up because of one big dramatic explosion. It was more like a slow leak that finally sank the ship. Mark and I were together for almost 6 years. The last two of those were exhausting in a way I didn't even realize until I was out of them. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't abusive in the obvious way, but he was controlling in that quiet, I'm just being practical way. Every decision had to be run by him, every purchase questioned, every plan analyzed to death. And after the twins were born, it got worse. I was drowning in diapers, no sleep, postpartum anxiety, and he was distant, critical, always telling me I was doing something wrong. You're holding them too much, they'll get spoiled. They don't need you every time they cry. Why are you so emotional? It's not that hard. I remember one night at about 3 a.m., Lily had a fever and wouldn't stop crying. I was pacing the living room, half asleep, holding her, and Mark woke up, looked at me like I was being dramatic, and said, "You're making it worse by freaking out." Something in me just broke a little. We tried therapy. He hated it. Said the therapist was taking my side. We lasted maybe 3 more months after that before we finally called it. Now we co-parent, or we try to. He has them every other weekend and one evening a week. On paper, it's fair. In reality, he questions everything I do. Their clothes, their food, their bedtime. The people I let around them, the toys I buy, the daycare I chose. I swear, if I changed their socks, he'd want a written explanation. Still, for the most part, we keep it civil. Tense, but civil. Until the airport. Back in March, I had to fly out to visit my sister. It was the first time I'd been away from the girls overnight, and I cried in my car in the parking garage like a complete mess before I even went inside. I was exhausted, emotionally wrung out, and running on gas station coffee and about 4 hours of sleep. My flight was delayed. Of course it was. So I'm sitting there at the gate, scrolling through pictures of Lily and Rose like a cliche, when the man sitting in the seat next to me says, very gently, "Twins?" I looked up, probably looking like I'd been hit by a truck, and said, "Yeah. How did you know?" He smiled and held up his phone. It was a picture of 4 teenage boys standing in what looked like a hiking trail, all of them grinning like idiots. "Because I raised 4 of these," he said. "You get a certain look in your eyes when you're outnumbered." I laughed, like actually laughed. It felt weirdly good. His name was Daniel. He was 45, a widower. He told me his wife had passed away 5 years earlier after a long illness. He'd raised his boys mostly on his own since then. The oldest was 20, the youngest 16. We talked for, I don't know, 2 hours? About kids. About how no one tells you how lonely parenting can be. About how airports are the worst, and also sometimes the only place adults get quiet time. When they finally called boarding, I realized I'd been smiling the whole time without noticing. We didn't exchange numbers right away. It wasn't some movie moment. But as we stood up to get in line, he hesitated and said, "Hey, if this is weird, you can say no. But I'd like to keep talking to you." I said yes. I didn't think much of it at first. I mean, I did, but also I didn't. I told myself it was just nice adult conversation, just someone who didn't look at me like I was either a mess or a problem to fix. We texted. Then we called. Then we met for coffee when I got back. Slow, careful, very, very cautious. He knew about the girls. He knew about Mark. I knew about his boys. I knew about his wife. There was no rushing, no pretending this was simple. But I started feeling like me again. Not just mom, not just ex, not just the tired one, just me. I didn't tell Mark right away. Not because I was hiding it exactly, but because I knew it would turn into a thing. And I wasn't even sure it was a thing yet. About 6 weeks in, Daniel and I were officially dating. Still slow, still careful. He hadn't met the girls. I wasn't planning on that for a long time. But Mark found out anyway. Not from me, from his sister. Apparently, she saw me at a cafe with Daniel and decided to play town crier. Mark called me that night. "Who is he?" he asked. No hello, no nothing. "Hi to you too," I said, already tired. "The guy you were with, don't play dumb." I sighed. "His name is Daniel. He's someone I'm seeing." There was a long pause. Then, "Already?" "It's been over a year, Mark." "And you think that doesn't affect the girls?" "They haven't even met him." "That's not the point. You're confusing them." "How?" "They're two. They don't understand this stuff. They understand when their dad interrogates their mom like she's on trial, though." He got angry, said I was being irresponsible, said I was thinking with my feelings instead of my head, said I was moving on too fast and setting a bad example. I reminded him that he'd started dating someone 3 months after we broke up. "That was different," he said. Of course it was. After that, things changed. He started making little comments during drop-offs. "So, who's watching them while you're out on dates? Do they even know who you're bringing into their lives? Hope this one doesn't disappear like the last one." There was no last one. Daniel was the first person I'd dated since him. He started being late returning them. Or early, without warning. He started asking the girls questions like, "Did mommy have a friend over?" Which they don't even understand how to answer. One time Lily said, "Mommy, coffee," because she saw my empty cup on the counter. And Mark looked at me like he'd caught me committing a crime. Then he started telling people, mutual friends, his family. Apparently, even some of my coworkers, since one of them awkwardly asked me if I was doing okay and if everything was stable at home. He told them I was prioritizing dating over my kids. He told them I was bringing strange men around the girls. He told them he was worried about their environment. None of that was true, but it spread anyway. The real explosion didn't happen in court. It didn't happen over text. It happened in my driveway, in broad daylight, with my neighbors pretending not to stare. Mark pulled up 10 minutes early, which should have been my first warning. I was in the kitchen cutting strawberries for Lily when I heard his car door slam. Not the normal close, the angry one, the I'm already mad one. Then his voice cut through the open window. "What the hell is that?" I looked out and saw him standing in the driveway, arms crossed, staring down the street like he was about to pick a fight with the asphalt. Daniel's car was parked half a block away. He wasn't even here anymore. He just dropped off groceries because my car was in the shop and I couldn't get to the store with the girls. I stepped onto the porch, Lily on my hip, Rose clinging to my leg. "Mark," I said, already tired. "What are you doing?" He pointed. "Don't play dumb. Whose car is that?" "It's a friend's. He dropped off groceries." "So he's here now?" "No, he left 10 minutes ago." His laugh was sharp and ugly. "Right, so this is it, huh? Already playing house?" "Lower your voice," I said, shifting Lily when she started to squirm. "You're scaring them." "You don't get to tell me what to do when it comes to my kids." "They're my kids too," I snapped before I could stop myself. That did it. He took a step closer, voice rising. "And you're confusing them. You think they don't notice some random guy's car outside their house? They don't even know him, Mark." "You think that matters?" He shot back. "You think kids don't feel this stuff? You think they don't pick up on chaos?" "Chaos," I said, my hands shaking now. "You're the one standing in my driveway yelling." He started pacing like he always does when he's worked up. "This is exactly what I mean. You're reckless. You're selfish. You're thinking about your love life instead of their stability." "That's not fair, and you know it." Then he said it. The line he knew would land. "You're just like my mom, always putting men first." It felt like someone punched the air out of my chest. I stared at him and said quietly, That's not true, and you know it. Because for 2 years I'd put everyone first. The girls, him, schedules, court, bedtime routines, doctor appointments. I hadn't even gone on a real date until recently. Get out of my driveway, I said. He scoffed. Or what? Or I'll call the police and explain why my ex is screaming at me in front of our toddlers. He stared at me for a long second, jaw tight. This isn't over, he said. I'll see what a judge thinks about this. Fine, I said, even though my stomach dropped. Leave. He slammed his car door again, buckled the girls in without another word, and drove off. That night, after I tucked them in, I stood in the shower and cried so hard my chest hurt, quietly, so they wouldn't hear me through the wall. Daniel has been steady, not in a flashy sweep you off your feet way, in a show up when he says he will way, in a doesn't raise his voice even when things get messy way. When I told him what happened with Mark, we were sitting in his car outside my place. The engine was still running. The groceries he'd dropped off were still in bags on my kitchen counter. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit on them. He thinks I'm confusing them, I said, staring at the dashboard, like I'm ruining them just by existing. Daniel didn't interrupt. He never does. He just waited until I finished spiraling. Then he said, quietly, "Do you think that?" I shook my head. "No, I think I'm trying. I think I'm exhausted. And I think he's mad that I'm not stuck anymore." He nodded, like that made sense. Like I made sense. "I don't want to be another problem in your life," he said. "You already carry enough." "That's not what you are," I said too fast. He gave me this small, careful smile. "Maybe. But I still want to be clear about something. Okay? If this ever starts to hurt your girls, or even just stress you out more than it should, you don't owe me anything. You don't have to push through it for my sake." I looked at him. "You're saying you'd just walk away?" "I'm saying I'd rather lose a relationship than be the reason your kids get caught in the middle of something ugly." That should have scared me. Instead, it made my chest ache in a quiet, stupid way. "You're not like him," I said before I could stop myself. He didn't ask who him was. He just said, "Good." We sat there for a minute in silence. The kind that isn't awkward. The kind that feels safe. "I'm not ready for you to meet them," I admitted. "Not yet." "I know," he said immediately. "And that's okay." "Most people would say that and secretly mean, 'for now,'" I said. "I mean it," he said. "They're not a milestone. They're not a level to unlock. They're your kids." Something in my throat tightened. "You don't even ask about them much," I said. "I do," he said gently. "I just don't want to turn them into a negotiation." Later, when Mark started telling people I was choosing a man over my children, Daniel was the one who read the messages over my shoulder and said, "That's not about you. That's about control." I snapped, "Easy for you to say. You're not the one getting calls from your aunt asking if you've lost your mind." He didn't get defensive. He just said, "No, but I am the one who can remind you why you started letting yourself breathe again." I asked him, "What if I really am moving too fast?" "Then we slow down," he said. "There's no deadline here." "And what if I'm messing this up?" He looked at me and said, "You're allowed to be human and still be a good mom. Those two things aren't opposites." He still hasn't met Lily and Rose, not because he doesn't want to, because he respects the line I drew and never once tried to blur it. And honestly, that's the part that makes me trust him the most.